Okay, good afternoon. It is 13:35, and we're going to be talking about, or having a discussion on, what's our discussion?
We're talking trash.
We're talking trash, solid waste. Wow. Okay. Let's see some folks light up. Jeff, Cliff, and Eric, I expect you're all on. And I know you don't have faces for radio, so pop your face up there. I see you. Okay. Jeff, you want to start this off?
Do whatever.
Actually, I'm going to pass this over to Eric. He has an opening statement to kick this off. So he wanted a little FaceTime with the commissioner. So here you go, Eric.
Careful what you ask for.
Really?
Commissioners, we were before you on January 14th to discuss options to make the Solid Waste Enterprise Fund self-sustainable. During that presentation, the board requested some additional information. We are here today to present the requested information and to further discuss the options available to you to make the Solid Waste Enterprise self-sustainable fund. And with that, I'll pass it over to Cliff to give you his presentation.
Okay.
Okay, good afternoon, commissioners. I had to be careful because on my copy it still said good morning. As Derek had stated, we're before you today to follow up on prior presentations as well as further discuss the Solid Waste Enterprise Fund. We have a short presentation after which we can entertain questions and further the discussion in the format of the work session. Okay, it does turn. Okay, commissioners, you've asked previously for a path to sustainability for the Solid Waste Enterprise Fund. Now, that same question has been posed for at least the last 20 years without finding a solution acceptable to prior boards. Now, the reason we are investing general fund dollars into the enterprise fund is because in the 90s, the county made a choice to transfer waste and took on that significant cost without creating a new revenue stream to cover it. And we've discussed that before. General fund dollars have been required ever since, and the problem is getting worse. As both management, budget, and DPW staff have stated on numerous occasions, we cannot fix this solely on the expenditure side. Little things can be done, and we'll continue to do that and continue to look for efficiencies and cost savings, but there is nothing on the expenditure side that can remotely fix the problem. Revenue must be generated, and there are only a few ways that can be done given the current operations and markets. Tipping fee adjustments can't solve it in a practical way, and we can't set the tipping fee high enough to cover the general fund transfer and not lose waste in the associated revenue. A significant tip fee increase was tried in fiscal 9. Tonnage was decreased, tonnage was decreased, tip fee revenue decreased. And the same thing could potentially happen depending on what we do with the tip fee today. If the board wants to balance the general fund or the solid waste enterprise fund on the revenue side, there are really only a few choices. So if continuing the general fund transfer is not an option, then from external and internal studies and evaluations over the years, these are the potential paths to financial sustainability of our current fund model. Each has its benefits and challenges, and none were pursued by prior boards for various reasons. And these paths are the following. First is some form of waste flow control. That's either legislative flow control through a county ordinance, directing trash to a county-owned facility, or the county implementing collection districts in some form, so we take control of the material and of the revenue. If we mandate that all solid waste in the county comes to Northern Landfill, a tip fee structure can be set to cover enterprise fund costs. Flow control would be needed to support other programs, such as pay-as-you-throw, because we would then control the waste stream, which today we do not, through the free market and through the subscription service. Flow control can also be legally challenging, and for a variety of reasons, including support of free markets, prior boards did not want to pursue it. The second path, if flow control is not desired, is we need to identify a new and different waste revenue stream. And again, we've discussed that previously. That different revenue stream could be a system benefit charge of some form that, again, we've discussed previously. If we want to solve this on the revenue side but are not willing to implement flow control, the system benefit charge is a path. It is a potential path. If that is a desired path, the conversation would then turn to what would it look like in detail and how would it be implemented. At that point, we would need to engage a consultant with expertise on the subject to be able to prepare detailed models for presentation to the board. Those models need to be defensible. They need to be financially defensible. They need to be legally defensible, and that's why experts would need to be called in on that topic. So third, if neither flow control nor a system benefit charge are desired, we could more thoroughly investigate eliminating waste transfer at some level and returning to a full disposal model until landfill space is exhausted. However, this path would likely have many consequences, including reducing the landfill life to between 12 and 15 years. Would also require a long-term plan that would need to be developed for what happens after the landfill closes. At that point, do we return to a transfer model, for example? Or are there other properties that could be acquired to continue on the disposal model? Lastly, if none of these options are desired, since we cannot fix this solely on the expenditure side, then we are left with where we are today. A general fund transfer, which will grow over time with no path to self-sustainability of the solid waste enterprise fund. Now, one thing I'd like to mention while we're on these topics, it's clear that one of our prior presentations may have unintentionally allowed for some conclusions to be drawn, particularly on the SBC. I just want to say, or we want to say that really given that we cannot guarantee what a private sector company would do in an open market, we can't state whether a particular resident's overall trash disposal cost would go down or up in a system benefit charge scenario. Following our last presentation, we had some success in our outreach to haulers regarding what their service charge under an SBC environment may be. And looking at that information as best as we can determine, this is, again, very, very small sample size, a hauler's service charge is roughly 75% of their bill, with the rest covering actual waste disposal costs. Again, that's a very small sample size. For certain, it varies company to company, as not all haulers operate under the same model. And again, we could not guarantee what any individual hauler would do under any free market force. Again, as I mentioned, very short presentation. The purpose of this would be more of the work session. We want to thank the board for your time, thank everyone involved in all these presentations that we've put together and helped us with the details of them. At this point, turn the work session over to the board so we can have the group discussion and direction.
If I can ask one question, Cliff, why do we have to be the one to transfer the waste? If we had an MOU with another facility somewhere, all the waste goes there, let them transfer it, we would cut down what comes into our facility tremendously. Is that a possibility? I'm rethinking the whole landfill differently than what we've been doing.
Mm-hmm. You have to look at it from a couple of different perspectives, whether we could do that, whether we're talking about a public sector partner or a private sector partner, would make a huge difference in what direction we can go in. From a flow control standpoint, it has to be to a facility that we would own and have a financial interest in. From a contractual standpoint, I am not familiar with the subject deep enough to know whether or not we would be able to put that out for bid and whether we'd have anybody reply at all. And if they did, what those costs would be and whether it would really truly be at the end of the day, a savings for us. keep in mind that the tonnage that goes across the scale, that revenue, regardless of whether we eliminate the transfer operation or not, if those tons decrease, the revenue decreases. And to a great degree, that gap in between, that deficit, slides along with it. It's not linear. It's not for every ton that we don't take in, okay, that ton, that gap then goes away. Now, one of the things I want to mention that leads into it is that we do have, through budget and finance, or through management and budget, there is the budget plan, the operating plan that we work on with the budget analysts and others. That's a very comprehensive plan, and we've been reviewing it closely with that group, and want to make changes to it so we could maybe more easily address or identify what those changes would be. Again, it's in the short year that I've been here, we've been looking at a lot of things, but the need is to go a lot deeper on that, to really make a solid determination. We don't want to present bad information to the board or to the public. It has to be accurate. And we would really need that much deeper dive that can be done in this short period of time to get that answer. And I'm not trying to dance around it, but that's really the bottom line of it.
In addition to that, we would need to know, are you suggesting that all of the haulers and the residents go away? Because if we're leaving the landfill open for residents, then we still have
Residents could use the facility we have modified somewhat, and I have my own. We'll get into the residential end of it. I'm talking about all the commercial and industrial waste going somewhere that that the private company handle all the transfer and the money. That would cut down everything we need at this facility. Now, residential waste, yes, we still have to, people bringing it in themselves and all the little peripheral things we still have to handle. But I'm looking at changing the whole system we have here, looking differently at this. I'm looking at it just from a business point of view here. Eric, that's your cue. But what I'm looking at is not widening that gap, because we've been doing the same thing for 6 years and it's not gotten any better that I've seen. I keep asking for, some resolution to it. We're going the wrong way. We got to back up and look at this differently than we have and start to look at how this can get that. The ultimate goal is down to zero as far as out of our funds, general funds to run this. So we have to look at, do we have to transfer that much trash? Is there another way to do it? Can we just shrink the whole thing down? I mean, that looks at manpower, equipment, everything. We don't have the expense for it. Even if it gets down to $200,000 a year, that's a big savings from where we are now. So yeah, I'm looking at this from a totally optimistic point of view, and you guys are the experts on it, but I need feedback from it.
So to Commissioner, to that, I would say, if you want the business to operate as a business, it is a landfill business. We are not landfilling in that landfill business, and that creates a huge hole in what we can possibly do. So absent you all giving us direction to move forward with landfilling at that landfill and making money that way, these are some of the
that's a dead end street. That ain't gonna happen. So.
Remember that revenue received by this operation is and only is the various tip fees. So if you're suggesting, and I may be misunderstanding you, that we don't accept trash, therefore we don't get a tip fee, we reduce and possibly eliminate, if we sent all the trash someplace else, some portion or all of our revenue. We might be able to eliminate a few costs, but we have several fixed costs in the system, the closed landfills, the maintenance of Northern landfill, because even if it weren't closed, it would still have to be maintained. If you're going to accept residential trash there, then you're still not going to reduce the amount of usage there by significantly. So I think, if the board directed staff to study it, we could certainly study this, but I think we'd be maybe going backward. Just in general, it sounds like we'd be maybe going in the wrong direction, revenue-wise.
We
We're
have to
trying
see
increase
if
revenue.
we could have a private enterprise come in and take over the trucks or a lot of the traffic. We still have to keep some scales up because of residential waste and all that. Take that off of it, have them take care of the transfer and hauling and all that. And that reduces our revenue. I know that because we're not bringing it in. But then we look at residential waste. And I was watching one day when I was in there, it's just pulled up. I watched the, truck goes down, gets the can as residential waste, runs around, takes around and dumps it. And I think, Jeff, you alluded to the fact you had a plan one time that residential waste went right into the truck that hauls it. Have a plan to it. We have to get efficient in what we're doing here at this site on that. So the residential waste goes across the scale, pays a tip fee or whatever it is, boom, into a truck. We don't touch it instead of running it back and around, 4 different cans in there, transferring them, dumping them, bringing them back. It looked to me like we were going in circles on that one. So efficiency in that part of it. Plus, we still have the recycling and we have the electronics and all these little aspects that I think you or Cliff gave us the information on, that some of it makes money, some of it doesn't. I think we still have probably a responsibility with those. But looking at this differently, we don't need to handle the volumes if we can get a private hauler to do, or a private company to do it. It's a thought. That's where,
That's fine. Commissioner Weaver, let me ask you a question. You mentioned with regard, first it was diverting the waste hauling vehicles away. So I assume you mean the ones that are not, everything other than the residential haulers. But you also mentioned about bringing some company in to do what we're doing on the facility. Assuming that you mean on the facility itself, the transfer operation at the transfer station, whether it's recycling or waste, that is already privatized out. We don't touch those trucks that come in. So any waste that comes in from a hauler or from an account holder, anything that goes back to that transfer station, not to the bins, but back to the transfer station, that's already managed by an outside contractor. And those contracts are going to be extended here very shortly. So that piece is already being done. If we're talking about then what our employees do and what's managed at the facility, we manage like I said, the container drop off, and absolutely that could be more efficient if there was a way to dispose of that material into transfer trailers. And now Derek can chime in here if he has the data, but I know we looked at that a few years back. It did not make it through the budget process before I got here. Somewhere upwards, I believe the whole entire project was either $500,000 or $600,000 in cost, which is likely why at the time that it did not go forward. One of the drawbacks of that on the property where we're at now, and I think where that facility was going to be, is within the limits of cell 4, the cell that's not built. And I really believe that we already have too many things sitting in the middle of the next cell that have to be moved at some point in time. And perhaps adding one more to it may or may not be a good idea, depending on how much time we can get or life we can get out of that, what that facility would be. But again, from the residential waste, the containers, the homeowner recycling lot, public leachate, maintaining our facility and 4 others, those are the primary jobs of our operations crew at that facility. And we have 6 operators, 2 foremen, so essentially 8 people that are in vehicles or in trucks at any given time. We did have more than that several years ago. I know the head count has been reduced after the last recession. So there are things there that need to be, investment needs to be made in and probably increased more than decreased. And a real good hard look around the facility would really and other facilities would really show that. But again, I guess the biggest point was that we are already, have a good portion of what's at that facility already subcontracted out to a third party.
If I may, I'm gonna have to state, I am extremely disappointed, and this is a work session. I mean, if this was my business, I'd fire the person who just put this together, because I really thought that you guys were gonna get together and run all the numbers of the expenses coming in and out, what we're receiving, and a breakdown in revenue, how much it's costing us on all these different elements to transfer out, and a long-term projection of what we could potentially do to change the management of our waste, whether it's investing and restoring the landfill and moving things around. I mean, I've been out to the landfill numerous times talking to Dwight Amos, and he expressed to me the things that need to be done. And now we are sitting here, and I've heard nothing about any of that. I want to see numbers. This is like trying to set up a business enterprise, and nothing that was presented to us today in any way addresses that. If we're bringing in all this recycling and we're charging, I think it's $35 a ton and it's cost us $140, they're the numbers we should be looking at. As commissioners, we need to be analyzing those numbers and breaking them down, how to figure out how to shift things around, how to reduce our transportation costs, because it's obvious that transportation costs is eating us alive. And if we can make the investment and open up a new landfill, like I think Mr. Amos advised me we should be doing, then that's what we should be here talking about. What's our long-term projection? Do we have any civil engineering plats and layouts of potentially what we can do? We got none of that. All we get is a couple bullet points that you want to express to us, but this does nothing for us to make this decision. I really thought as a work session, that's what we're going to do. When we have work sessions on zoning, we break down all this stuff. This isn't a work session. I don't even know what this is besides a waste of time.
Well, actually, let me chime in, because I understand your intent and what you're sharing. But for me, it's understanding the problem. Before we're coming up with any solutions, it's really getting to understand the problem more and more, just like we did with Director McCoy. And it's not necessarily the baby steps, but it's ensuring that we all see what the problem is in front of us, and then moving forward with different options and different opportunities. So I understand, Commissioner Boucher, your drive to get into the meat of it, but taking a step back, even though we received one information briefing, this allows us to crosstalk on seeing, okay, are we all seeing the same problem? And that is that we're continuing to use general funds to subsidize the enterprise fund, and that is not sustainable, And now we're looking at, okay, what are other revenue options? What are other opportunities? But I think you're 2 steps in front of at least where I am in understanding the grander, the larger picture of it. So, my recommendation is let's continue having this crosstalk, and it may not be very long. I mean, we have 2 hours scheduled. If it's 45 minutes to an hour, whatever it is. But I think this is a very important step that we need to take, not just for us, but for the entire community as well. So that's my
Commissioner Rothstein, you're exactly right. We need to set it down. I think our ultimate goal is 0% funds for the solid waste fund. We need to extend cell 3 for as long as possible out there. And that's why I was looking at diverting waste from Carroll County to private place or somewhere. So we're not dealing with the volumes. Those are 3 major areas I've been looking at here, and then efficiency for the ones that bring in their own residential waste. But all the heavy truck traffic diverted to another site or a private site somewhere like that. Seriously, relook at the whole package, the way we're doing it. If it was your site and you had to start over, how would you build it to extend cell 3, not have to put cell 4 in place for years, and to get rid of the waste and meet our obligations to the citizens of Carroll County? That's what I'm after. I don't mean to be, I've been thinking about this too long, and I need to get everybody up to speed on it. So don't take it personally there at all.
I get it. Did you Commissioner Frazier?
First, what do you mean by flow control? You mean all the trash that's generated in Carroll County goes to our landfill and where we make sure that happens? Is that what you're talking about?
The flow control in one form or another, and that's usually it's either by legislation or by controlling the waste ourselves through collection districts. You're controlling the material, therefore you're controlling the revenue. What you end up doing with that material, whether it's landfill transfer or some other technology down the road, the tip fee structure gets set based on that material or based on that volume material to cover the cost of that operation. We are losing between 40 and 50,000 tons of waste a year to the transfer station in Finksburg. And that's from a MDE state report. Now, you can look at it two different ways. It's revenue coming in that we're not getting. Yes. It's also in our current model, no transfer costs that we're spending. So it's a double-edged sword. And I'm sure the whole group does completely agree with Commissioner Boucher. You know, a long-term master plan for the facility, maybe looking at, as Commissioner Weaver said, start from scratch and see, you know, which direction we should go in. I know I've mentioned that the very first presentation back in March after I started. It is something we don't have. The master plan has been, we're going to transfer indefinitely to extend the landfill life. So, yeah, some of those goals are, you know, maybe competing goals, but it certainly needs to be done. Yeah, there is infrastructure that needs to be replaced. Landfilling generally is the most cost-efficient way today of handling waste. We also don't know what's going to come down the pike regulatory-wise that may or may not allow us to do some of those things that we're talking about down the road. And I'll pass this off to somebody who knows, who's more familiar with the those bills that are pending in Annapolis. But they're going after multiple waste management schemes to try to basically outlaw them in the state of Maryland. So it may be the case we want to do something today, we might be allowed to for a year or two, and then regulatory, everything changes, and we have to put the brakes on and go in a different direction.
Okay, the last time that we met, we were talking about a system benefit fund, and the question was asked, I might have been the one to ask it, I don't know, if we went for the system benefit fund and everyone paid, I think the rate was $170 a year, we wouldn't have tipping fees. But how would the municipalities handle that? Are they going to give a tax break to the people? Because I live in the city of Westminster. My trash is picked up by the city of Westminster and taken to the landfill. I pay that out of my taxes. So how are municipalities going to handle that? Did we reach out and to them? And I thought that we were going to. So,
I mean, I think we're talking, and Jeff, before you jump in, because I think we're talking two very specific issues. One is, you know, the landfill itself, the capacity in the landfill. And then the second, you know, is the budget, is,
right.
You know, how are we going to sustain either the landfill and or the enterprise fund?
Yeah, but one rules the other.
Well, one rules.
And we've been briefed
One
on
rule-
this since March.
Yeah, but
So-
one rules the other. It's just, we got to figure out, is this a fee approach? Is this what you're going after? Or what
Well,
you mentioned?
for what, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just, I mean, yeah, I mean, they one rules the other. I don't know, because the landfill's got a specific capacity, and
Right.
that's it. And once it's filled, it's filled.
And from what we were told, we cannot raise the tipping fee enough to cover the $2.5 million difference. I mean, we could raise it, but then no one's going to come. So therefore, that's not one of the options.
Right.
So flow control, regulating people to bring stuff to us, not in favor of that really. But the system benefit fund, if there's no tipping fee, and that was what we had discussed, but we had, okay, how's that going to affect municipalities? And I think you said already, Cliff, that it would be about 25% of for most haulers, that's 25% of what they charge as a tipping fee. So that would, so
And that's a very, very, very small sample size.
Right. But we
Please
can,
keep that in mind.
but at least we have something to go off of, which we didn't before. So whatever you pay, if you pay $400, now you're paying $300. Got it. And that's just generalization, but what about the municipalities?
Well,
You're paying for-
system benefit.
Go
Go ahead,
sorry,
Cliff.
go ahead. No, please, go ahead.
The system benefit charge doesn't necessarily solve our problem. It solves our financial problem, but it doesn't solve the landfill problems. We still have the cell 3 filling up, cell 4 coming. The only thing is it solves our financial problems for a number of years. But now we still have to deal with our future here at the landfill and what we're the extension of that cell or any of them. And
No,
I'm sorry about the lag time in these virtual meetings. I didn't mean to cut you off, Cliff. It just, that couple seconds makes a big difference here. I looked in the charge and yeah, that solves some of the finances, but it doesn't solve our initial problem at the landfill.
but it does in a way, because if we can still transfer trash out of the landfill from the meeting we had a couple of years ago, if we're going to do it the way we're doing it right now with the new compactor that we bought, everything else, that landfill will last about 100 years is what I was told. I remember writing that down, about 100 years if we continue transferring stuff out. So if we use the system benefit charge so we can continue transferring things out of there, $170 per person or per household or business, whatever, per year, that's something that we certainly should be looking into. So therefore, it brings our money from the general fund to zero. It would have to be adjusted every couple of years or so. I understand that. Everything else is adjusted too. So it's my gas and electric bill. I understand it. But if it extends the life to 100 years of the landfill that we have now, and it's possibly saving some money. If you're paying $400, now you're paying $300. So for your hauler to take your trash to the landfill, if you're taking it yourself, then you don't have to worry about it. The hauler fee, I mean. But again, what about the municipalities? Did you contact municipalities? Are they going to give a break in taxes or anything else?
And I'll jump in, Commissioner, we did not reach out to the municipalities. I know it was a question that was asked. Is the situation not knowing the direction we're going in? Every municipality can run things different. They may choose to not adjust their taxes. They may have a tax increase that year because of some other expenses, and they choose not to adjust if this goes into place. If it was a choice that was made, there's too many variables with the mayors and councils of how they would handle that and adjust that. I know when we did the pay as you throw, we provided gift cards back to the citizens for the tip portion of their taxes that they paid. But whether the town would have continued on later on after the fact, it was still no determination was made during that process that would tell us whether they would or would not, because it is their mayor and council would have to make those decisions and how they wanted to handle that.
Right, I understand that, but okay, let's go on the assumption that, like the city of Westminster, they don't collect their own trash. They contract it out. Let's go to the assumption that who they contracted out to is saving 25% because now they don't have to pay tipping fees. So, I don't know, because what is the city going to do with that extra 25%? I don't have any idea. But and I did mention this last time, we should reach out to them. Do you have any plans? They say, we don't know. Fine. But at least we reached out to them. But if they say, if we're saving 25% now and all things being equal, we'll take 10% off a tax bill or something like that. That's something that we know and we can work with. But not having that information now after the last meeting and we asked for that information, it's kind of frustrating.
Yeah, and I agree. And Jeff, I mean, there's 8 municipalities. It's not like, 250. And yes, they may have different variables or different approaches, but having the discussion saying that we are looking at this problem set focused on the funds, the enterprise funds and the landfill specifically and approach them with that. I think that does add value to help us come up with a county-wide solution. one does, like Commissioner Wentz said, one is, associated with the other. But right now, it's still very difficult to understand, how we can lessen the impact on the landfill, and like Commissioner Frazier said, if there's a way to lessen the impact on the landfill and make it last 100 years or whatever it may be, then we should know what is it going to take to do that, and is that palatable to the county. I mean, it's very difficult, especially now in the pandemic, that we're going to be asking the county residents an additional $170, what it may be, in addition to all the other things we're trying to do. It's going to be very difficult. And this may not be the time to be reaching out to the county for any additional, and when I say the county, the community, for any additional dollars. So that's personally my biggest concern right now.
Well,
Yeah, the only way I would do that is there's a savings somewhere.
Yeah,
And
there'd
that's
have
what
to
I
be.
want to find out. If there's a savings somewhere else,
right.
and one of the savings is going to be saving that landfill for X amount of years,
Yeah.
because the permitting a new landfill, putting one in, you're talking tens of millions, if not $100 million. To do that, I would like to try to avoid that for those 99
Right.
years.
Right.
Yeah, I would too. The
Just
problem.
as an example, the town of New Windsor, the gift cards, I believe, were like $30 or $35, which covered the tip fee for 1 year for the residents, the way it worked out. Which I'm not sure what the total tax bill is, but it may be in the line of 1/10 or 0.2% of their entire tax bill is tip fees, because the rest is going toward all their other operation and costs. So, I'm just bringing that point up, is that it may be on the fact of tip fees, it's negligible, even on a small town, smaller town of New Windsor, for what their tax bill may be. So,
Commissioner Wentz?
We have so many variables in this landfill. Even the one, hauling leachate away, look what it's costing us, trucks, the tanks, the manpower to keep that going away. What is the cost of running the sewer line to the landfill and hooking up? Can it be done? We look at, can it be transferred somewhere else? And what would be the cost to us? What would we save? What would we lose? How can we, I think we have to look at each of the recycling entities and how do they fall together? What should we have? What shouldn't we have? If we're losing money on it, maybe we don't need to. We have to meet our state 37% or 35%, whatever it is, there. And what happens if we don't? But the other part of it is maybe some of this should be diverted into the solid waste and sold somewhere or gone. But, each of these little aspects, and I'm sure there's about 20 different areas here, and how can we make things more efficient? How can we do some of these things? All have to be looked at individually and then put together as far as the total cost savings. This is a tough one. And Cliff, I wouldn't want your job for anything right now. But I see this as the way we have to look at this and go through each one. Is it possible to get that sewer line in? Is it possible to divert this? And what would it be the benefit to us? Is it possible to extend cell 3 for 20 years? And how will we do it? Is it, not to move to cell 4 for that longer than that? That's what I'm hoping to look at in this. And the answer is, I don't think you have right now. I really don't. This is, we have all theory, but do we have the answers and financial aspects of that? No. And I think we really need to see this spelled out line by line, how it goes. Right now, we're all over the place looking at things. We have to have a line by line of what revenue comes in landfill, what can we change from it, and give you guys some freedom to make those changes, or at least propose them without, maybe there's a reason we can't do that, but I think as the people responsible for it, you have to have the freedom and leeway to make those suggestions. And what's happening with the Montgomery County MRF or that type thing? Anything, or is that just a pie in the sky thought?
The regional MRF that was
Yeah.
being discussed? Jeff might have a better answer on that from the authority, perspective. I know that they're still, working through what the scope of that would be, who's going to be a partner, who wouldn't be. But I still believe it's still deep in the study phase, is not?
Yeah, they're still going through we're still going through the financial investigations on that and to locate a couple properties to site such a location. For the next step to be for all of us to come together, and we'd have to get multiple counties to agree to construct, operate, manage, market for multiple years to come, because the only way to make something of this sort work for all counties is we need, close north of 250,000 tons a year of recycling to come through the facility to make it anything that's marketable, and the materials have to be clean enough in order to market it, because if the material isn't clean, it has to be removed from the facility and it goes to somebody's landfill to be lit. It has to go to somebody's landfill to either be transferred out or to be disposed of because it's not marketable material. So these are things that, while our percentage of contamination is down drastically from where we were years ago from the efforts taken, some other counties may not be, have it as clean, or, they have other methods to treat that. These are all things that we're trying to take into consideration as we're studying that aspect of it.
It's all a vicious cycle here.
Yeah.
And just what you're talking, well, first of all, that system benefit charge is a fancy way of saying tax.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a tax is a tax is a tax. So be careful how you
that's-
camouflage it.
I understand that completely, but we're taking that out of general fund and we're getting that money from taxes.
So, right. So you'd have to really, as you say, you'd have to really identify where the savings would be,
Exactly.
which would be critical here.
Mhm.
And to your comments, Jeff, we're already seeing, I contacted you guys last week because the state legislature put in a House bill and a Senate bill. And while all of us are continuing to go round and round and round like hamsters on a wheel, the state legislation is hearing this. So now they want to put bills in that's going to make us do something. We have got to try to get on a fast track here and stop going around that wheel. And I don't know if that's getting us all setting together. I question really how the waste authority, what are they doing for us again? I mean, shouldn't they be really out in front of this and saying, here we go? It seems like they're on the wheel too. Aren't they the guys with the answers?
They're the tool to get the answers. We have the groups together to where we can all collectively put studies together and market. The legislation that just went into place, the authority in none of the surrounding counties, including the same county that legislation was put in, Public Works, didn't even know that bill was put in until after it was posted.
Yeah, well, that's my point. That's my point, Jeff.
Right.
We've got the all-powerful Annapolis that thinks now that they can do this for us, and they're going to tell us what to do. Well, wait a minute.
We're gonna have to pay for that to be done. Whoever does that study, Maryland Department of the Environment does not have the money. Unfortunately, doesn't have the money for that, and it's the Fox building the hen house to watch the hen house, because that could be additional legislation that could come out to us later on. I mean, those are some of the fears that we do have. With other mandates that are out there, environmental and others, that we know that, while today, we have some high costs that are against us today, any legislation that comes through this upcoming year or two could heavily impact our bottom line for years to come. And Commissioner Weaver, just to touch upon the line, it is our understanding, we're still investigating, when we made the agreement and the board, previous boards, made the decision to go the route of expanding the sewage treatment, the pre-treatment facility versus the pump station and line, that it took the chance of us of ever connecting into that sewer line off the table. I know there's been some different administrations since then with the city, so I mean, some other conversations possibly could happen. But you know, we're still in the middle of a $5+ million, almost $6 million project to enhance the, you know, that was the commitment that was made for us to reconstruct that pretreatment facility. So we have that expense along with, if we were to change routes and add this to it, that would impact on the septic facility side of things. We'd have some higher expenses there that would have to be addressed also.
Hey,
That
Chad.
we are the septic facility's biggest customer, so.
Ted, real quick,
Direct from the sewer. I'm sorry.
Ted, if you can, you know, talk up a little bit about if we left it the way it is by transferring money from the general fund, the impact that it would have, is there a hybrid approach in taking some from the general fund while we're looking at other ways to minimize this or mitigate this? Because again, it's a landfill issue and it's a dollar revenue issue. And I'd like to get your thoughts.
Can't hear you, Ted.
Can't hear you, Ted.
I thought he was praying.
Yeah, I know. I wasn't sure. I thought I saw a hand grenade in his room.
Check your gear wheel.
Haven't heard that for a while.
He must have been on a Zoom call.
While he's checking his gear wheel, Jeff, back to my question. The Northeastern Waste Management, or whatever they are, that acronym, you can't say their acronym, which is troubling to me because all the rest of them you say.
We call it the authority.
Okay, well, that's troubling.
Wow.
We need to call the authority? Well, I don't know. Anyway, isn't their approach, look, we're all going through this. I know that County Executive Elrich, I had a conversation with him. He doesn't know what he's going to do down there. They have no more land to put any landfill on. So they've got to do something there. I talked with Johnny O, same thing in Baltimore County. Calvin Ball's having a problem in Howard County. I can't understand why. Maybe the answers here are the regional approach. Maybe that's the answer. Maybe we all pool our monies that we have together, and whether it's here, that wherever, to begin to fix this. And I thought that was isn't that on the authority to do that? And aren't they working on that?
They're working on some of it is done on an individual basis. Some of it's done on a partnering basis. Some of the decisions and negotiations and management of contracts that we currently have, we're teamed together with Frederick County, and they manage those contracts and manage those negotiations because we're a small player. We're a small player in this field with only 100,000, 120,000 tons of trash a year coming out of our facility. We're up against areas that take up 1 million tons a year. So, you know, we are a small player. We have to team with other surrounding counties. Yeah, Montgomery County has their own, recycling center. They have they're large enough and have the infrastructure to do a lot of things themselves, except they're facing legislation and, in some direction that their incinerator will be, environmental concerns that their incinerator goes away. Well, that's
Right.
also putting strain on us because that trash has to go somewhere. And if they don't have landfill space, it needs to transfer to to somewhere over the border, maybe in Pennsylvania, which may push us out as a small player from going, transferring our trash to Pennsylvania. Now we need to build a rail system to send it somewhere else.
Right. Well, I know that's the struggle I'm having here. I can remember in the last board that we sat here and wanted to know what the authority was doing for us. Remember that? Remember that conversation we had? And, what is the money that we pay them do for us? Dennis, you remember that.
Yep.
And Dick, you do. Tell us what our fees do for us. Well, we need help. So I don't care whether we're big, little. This seems to be because of the fact that we're seeing Annapolis get involved now, this is a regional problem. There's got to be a way to pool all our resources together to either try to repair, fit, whatever, this problem. We're all in this together. So I'm frustrated a little bit with that. I'm frustrated because I hate to see bills get put into Annapolis, which is the beginning stages of them thinking that they know better than us. And that troubles me. We have got to get on top of this, or else they're going to tell us what we're going to do. And then I don't know what we're going to do. So I just wish we could all get together at the table, the regional folks.
We came very close to pulling out of the authority. I think if you remember right, at a couple of years, several years ago, 4 or 5, but just dropping it and going on our own. Your question's right. What are they doing for us? And right now we do need help. We have more questions. We have answers.
Everybody does.
How do we need to put this together?
Yeah, that's my point. Every county is struggling with this right now. Not in the same quantity, and I get that, Jeff. But basics, we all have those same questions. All of us.
I hear you. I understand. And this is why we're looking at a regional, this is why, as part of the authority, we're looking at a regional MRF and looking at, could that work? Would that work? Would everybody participate that needs to participate? Would everybody agree to participate for 20 or 30 years into, a $50 to $100 million facility or whatever it may be to operate, manage, and maintain it for years to come? Could the marketing alone of the recycling and where does that material go? You always there's staff upon staff that manage that. With trash, yes, some have incinerators. City of Baltimore brings it to, some of Baltimore counties goes into the incinerator. Incinerator goes away. Yes, they're going to have difficulty. If, I understand, and this is exactly where we quiver every time something comes in the legislation, whether it's environmental, and we want to be good stewards of the environment. We care about the air quality. We care about what we do, how this is handled. We care about what happens. And some of these other counties, because of the volume they have, could greatly impact. They've already invested in their infrastructure. It's difficult for them to change paths in order for everybody to come together at the same table. It would be, that becomes difficult. And these are things that we're working on and we're trying to work through. And this is what we're working on with the authority as they renegotiate our deals to save us money. I mean, we could have been $160 a ton with recycling, and then negotiated it down to where we are today. It's by those teaming efforts, and it's the marketing, it's their legal team, and it's the ongoing maintenance and management of those contracts that we don't have the staff to maintain and manage them. So that's where a lot of that comes from. I think Ted's back on Roberta's spot.
So Jeff, and Ted, I do want to hear from you. We've been doing this for an hour. I feel like we've been going in somewhat of a circle. What I want you to think through, whether you can answer it right now or just in a little bit, what do you need from us? What guidance do you need from the Board of Commissioners to take in the next steps forward to come back to us, to allow us to make a decision? Because right now we cannot make a decision because there's no specifics thrown at us to make that decision. So if you need some specific guidance above and beyond what you've already received, like going to municipalities, Commissioner Frazier shared, to all the other comments that we made, you got to let us know. Because right now, I don't know what guidance more to give you except what we've already been saying. So I want you to think through that, the three of you, and then, after Ted, maybe come back to us. So Ted, I like to hear from you if you got a sec.
Did I break Roberta's computer?
Now, you're
We
good.
got you.
Okay, good. All right, to go back to two things that Commissioner Rothschild asked. I want to kind of,
No, wrong answer.
oh, sorry.
Okay, that's at least 20 push-ups. So, wow, hurtful.
It's better when you're muted.
Yeah, no kidding. You had a voice for silent movies on that one.
Sorry.
Yes, you are. Go ahead.
Everything that we're talking about here goes back to our original sin. We took on a big new expenditure without figuring out how we were going to pay for it. We've been living with that for 20 years. The only reason we're talking about this now is because of that. Now, a lot of what you have talked about, the things that you think we should have done, are looking for things that aren't big enough to fix this problem. Even if we could find hundreds of thousands of dollars of expenditure savings, I don't believe we can, but even if we could, we're looking at a problem of millions of dollars. There isn't enough money being spent on stuff other than transfer to get anywhere near solving this problem. So when we talk about how can we fund this in the future, and this goes back to what Cliff said at the beginning of this conversation and why he said what he said, there really aren't very many options here that can truly resolve the problem. We can continue to live with what we have. That the fund is unbalanced and we just have to make it up. The only reason we're not doing that or planning to do that is because the board said, how can we stop doing that? So that's why we're talking about this. But if you want to stop supporting the enterprise fund, the things you can do that are big enough to change this are what Cliff said to you earlier. You can require the solid waste to come to you, and then you can set the tipping fee wherever you want, and you can make it balance. Or you need a new source of revenue. I think system benefit charge is that source of revenue. Maybe there's something else. I don't know what another option is. But if you don't want to do flow control and you don't want to create a new revenue, then you are stuck with saying we're going to continue to subsidize this. And along with everything else in our operating plan, we're going to have to figure out how to make that bottom line work. Everything else we're talking about, sure, we can try and work on things. But I don't think there should be any assumption that people aren't already thinking about these things and trying to find ways to make this work. I think Cliff's reality is he probably doesn't have enough funding to operate the landfill the way he probably wants to, the way he should. So, I understand your desire for an easy solution to this. I understand your desire to try and dig in and figure out how we can make this work. But I don't believe those paths are truly available to you. And I think what we need, and I don't want to speak for Jeff, but I'm sitting here, you saying, what do we need from the commissioners? I think we need to hear from you that you're content to continue subsidizing the fund, that you're willing to explore a system benefit charge, or that you're willing to explore flow control. I don't see how it's not one of those three choices.
Well, okay, I was make sure you were done, but that's the reason I would like to look deeper into the system benefit charge, because we're taking about $2.5 million out of general fund right now to subsidize solid waste. Now that $2.5 million is competing with the dollars for the sheriff's department, fire and EMS, schools, everything else. I don't think it should be that way. And when we took that money out, if we did a system benefit charge and let that $2.5 million in there, we have more money to do other things with. And right now we need that additional funds. We really do. And, every time we subsidize this and we look, let's increase the fee for this service or whatever, and which we have done in the past, that's actually subsidizing the solid waste as well. And we're raising all those other things. And I know it's a tax. I know that, but you're either going to tax over here or you're going to tax there. Why not say what it's for? That's what this is for. I mean, there could be another way out of it. I don't see it right now.
Right.
I would like to know more about the system benefit charge. I really would. I would like, again, I would like to know what the municipalities might do. They don't want to do anything, fine, and then we know that. But I just think for $170 is what we talked about last time for each homeowner and each business in Carroll County to pay. I think it's a viable solution to this problem because again, the landfill keeps going for another 99 years. And we're not worried about on the revenue side of raising, yes, I know it's a tax, but the other taxes on the other side. It's just a balancing act, but
No.
I would like to get this to zero somehow.
You're going to have a huge pushback because you're going to have the folks that go to the landfill to take
Yeah.
their own.
Yeah.
That group of folks will be more boisterous, I think, than even
Yeah.
the folks that get their trash picked up.
But they won't
Because
have to
they're gonna
pay
say, "Well, wait a
anything."
minute, you're going to charge me to go across the scale, but yet you're taxing me to go.
No,
across
we're not going to charge you to go across the scale. That's what the thing is. If this
So
goes
you do
into
away
fact,
with that.
yes, no one pays to go across the scale if we do this. That's the savings.
Dennis, I think that's a Band-Aid on where we are. That's right now. I'm
I wish
looking
I
at
could
this
say-
landfill long term. I'm looking out for Wance's grandchildren, his great grandchildren here in this county. We can only bury so much for so long. That's going to surface eventually or come back to us somehow. We have to solve the entire problem as we're looking at it and look big picture on it. We don't need, yes, right now we need to get the trash out of here. We can't bury that much. What other options do we have? And I want to, for one, I'd like to say, Cliff, if it was yours, how can you make this work? Give him free handle to go out and explore things and come back with answers to a lot of these things that we have. I'm sure a lot of them aren't going to be easy, and they're not going to be cheap. I don't think on the upfront. Long term, I think we can close that gap, but we can't continue doing things the way we've been doing them. It's just not going to work. You expect the same results if we do, and it's just not going to be what we need to do. We need some changes, and we need to have the authority or somebody step in here in a couple of years. If they do the MRF, that's only recycled materials. We still have trash to deal with, and we need to extend things as long as we possibly can in this landfill. I don't know if 99 years was the answer, but that's very short term in the whole scheme of things here. So I think we have to look bigger than that.
If I may, I'm going to explain why the system benefit charge or tax is going to be a complete and utter failure. It is because of inflation. It does nothing to address the inflationary cost of fuel and transporting the goods or the trash that's being moved to our facility. All right, so we make it 170 this year. Next year, we're going to be in the hole again. And guess what we're going to do? We're going to come back and raise that tax again. Over and over again, we're going to keep raising that tax. And if it is $170 a year per household, that comes out to around $14 a month in fees. And you're telling me that there's no way the hauling service can directly charge the people who are using the service of the $14 a month increase in fees to dispose of their trash, which ultimately would come back to us? We are not doing anything to look at all the nuts and bolts of how the business model is set up. And what extremely disappoints me is I've emphasized this to staff over and over again, that that's my objective as a businessman, to look at the entire picture of what we're doing in waste management. I commend Ms. Eisenberg earlier, who presented a much better, thorough, in-depth analysis of fees for her department than you guys have done. What you have is a very complex system, and we have very tough decisions to make. And what we expect of you is to come back with a full-blown view of all the nuts and bolts of what we're faced with, the recycling coming in, the expenses of it. I'd love to see a breakdown of all that and a potential picture of what we could do long-term to make the investment. I'm willing to make an investment in your department. This is a prime opportunity where you guys have a chance to present to us how to modernize this system, how to keep our costs down, stop transporting stuff out. I'm telling you what, transporting our trash out is not the solution. It's never going to be unless the cost of fuel drops through the floor, and it's not going to. It's going to exponentially keep going up. So we pass a systems benefit tax this year. It solves the inflationary cost for this year. Well, guess what? Next year it's going to be worse. Then we're going to have to go back and raise that tax on our citizens again. It's not going to solve the problem. The cost of the trash disposal needs to be directly linked to its expenditure. The haulers should be charging the customers the fee to dump the trash in their facility. And I don't think losing revenue is a bad thing. The revenue we're gaining comes with a liability. Like I said earlier, if we're charging $35 a ton for something that's cost $140, why in the heck do we want to keep getting $35 a ton when we're just keep going deeper and deeper in the hole? We really need to have a true work session where you guys take the time and put all this data together and allow us to look it over and make a decision. Because I think what's being predetermined by you all is to put this tax down our throat. Because if you really had a motive to do anything else, you'd present this information to us to analyze, and you're not. You're trying to box us into raising taxes on our constituents. It's their butts on the line, not yours. We represent the citizens, and I'm telling you, what I want is for you guys to lay out everything that's involved with the waste management so we can make a decision. It's their decision to make, not yours.
So Commissioner Boucher, I'm gonna disagree. It's not our butts on the line, whatsoever. It is our responsibility to make decisions, to run this county and to lead this county. But I never felt like it was my butt on the line because somebody will be dissatisfied or satisfied. Again, you mentioned that the service benefit charge is not the solution because of inflation. I don't know the inflationary rates projections or anything like that. I don't know. I have not heard from any economist that inflation is going to go through the roof. I don't know. So I can't go there. You said transferring is also not the solution. I think what we need to do, and I'm not pointing at you, Commissioner Boucher, but I think we collectively need to provide the team, things for them to look at further in further detail. This is not an overnight solution. And this is not, just like Ted said, this is not an overnight problem that has been created. This has been going on. So to look at the service benefit charges, the value towards it, the risk associated with it, if that was to be put in place, and then also some of the other options. I think that's the guidance that we should be giving. I'd like to know, again, I don't want to go down the rabbit holes because, we can give you 1,000 different points to look towards. I want you to focus on 2 or 3 actions to come back to us to then help us make a decision, especially as we're going into the budget. So I don't personally, I guess I'm professionally, like the service benefit charge because of its associated as a tax. And I just feel like this is just the wrong time to even recognize that's something we should be doing. But the fact is, if there's a benefit to doing it, I need to understand the risk associated with it as well before I make a decision. So I would like to see what that cost would be with a service benefit charge. It allows us to take it off the table as opposed to putting it on the table. But we need the facts to be able to take it off the table. But I do believe, and again, I'm counting you a bit, Commissioner Boucher. I do believe that you 3 did come prepared to have this conversation. You got what you intended to do, and that was for all of us to crosstalk about this. That's the intent of this. So, we're not going to come up with solutions. We're going to come up with, the next steps, and that's important. And I'll stop there. But Commissioner Weaver, you got thoughts on this?
Yeah, I agree. I'm not crazy about a tax on anything, but I do think, Ted, I do disagree with you on one thing there. I think we watch the pennies and we start to see the dollars come back to us. And I know it's not going to be enough, but at least it's a start. And we start to look at every little aspect of the landfill. And you guys, you know, I know you came into workshop to discuss things, and that's what we're trying to do. And I know some of us get passionate about keeping things, you know, working for our constituents and our friends and neighbors out here. But I think what we have to do is focus on any aspect you can come back with and just say, you know, I think we can do this, and think outside the box of what we've been thinking in the landfill for 20-some years. And Ted's right. We created this. Now we expect you to solve it. So I think what we have to do is get into, or we didn't, but some other people helped do that. But anyhow, we need any suggestions you have, any area you want to delve into, and let's throw it out there and see what we can do to make this happen. And Jeff, I do think, you know, you do have the solid waste out there in a few years. If you can get that MRF or something up running, great. But we need answers now for short term here. And I just think our message to you has to be, get creative, whatever you can come up with, throw it out to us in a meeting and see where we can go with it. And we may take it a bit at a time. We're not going to solve this whole thing at once, or it had been done years ago, but I think we have to start bit at a time. It's like eating an elephant, one bite at a time, we'll get there. So I think that's the charge we have to send to you.
Put an elephant on my smoker.
Commissioner Frazier, comments?
Well, I would like to hear more about the system benefit charge. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I'd like to at least see it. I'm not,
Yeah.
you know, a tax is a tax, and that's how I feel.
Yeah.
Same, but if
agree.
it would eliminate the over the scale charge, or it would do something for those folks in the rural areas that pay the haulers independently, if it would do something for that
Mhm.
fee, then I may be up for that. I mean, I think that would be good, but I keep going back to we've got to reach out and tell the authority what the challenges are. They should know this. So we need their help. So that I'll leave it at that. I think we need to reach out to them, because this bill that I called you about, Jeff or Mike and Eric or Cliff, all of you, I had all of you involved. That scares the living daylights out of me. We've got to get in front of this. So as Commissioner Weaver says, put it all out there. If it sounds ridiculous, let us see it. Whatever. Because we're just, as you said, Ed,
Yeah.
we've talked about this now for almost 2 hours, and what have we accomplished? Well, I'm not sure. The dialogue's been good, but I think what we accomplished was we've got to get every possible avenue of where we need to go with this on paper and look at it again.
Yep. And brainstorm. Yeah. Commissioner Boucher?
Just what I agree. I think, you know, knowledge is power, and the more knowledge our staff gives us, the better decisions we can make. And I'm sorry if I'm hard, but this is a very important issue. You know, this affects our environment, and I'm willing to make a long-term investment for you guys to help solve this problem. But in order for us to make a really good, intelligent decision, I want to see everything. I want to see what you see. I don't like making decisions when my subordinates are holding more information than me. I just feel a little bit insulted in a way, and I'm sorry if I offend you, but the less information you're giving me when I keep soliciting you for information, the more ticked off I'm getting. And I hope it starts to reverse so we make better decisions.
Okay. I think you got your marching orders, as we would say. Jeff, any final words?
Can I just request one thing? So, I think I
Yeah,
heard
please.
the conversation, but I just want to be sure, because this is a direction for us. I think what I heard from the group is that we do not want to landfill. We want to continue to transfer all of our waste, pretty much all of it. I mean, I guess the direction right now is 10,000 tons a year we are bearing. That's the marching orders. That's the direction we want to go.
Well, right now, I guess it is, yes. But then that leads to my question. What happens when Pennsylvania decides okay, we're done. Because Baltimore County's going to transfer, Montgomery County's going to transfer, Howard County's going to transfer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that time could be closely coming to us too. I don't know where all this trash is going in Pennsylvania. I don't want to say that I don't care, but I maybe I do. But there's going to probably be a point where they say, you know what, we're done. We can't take anymore. And then what do we do? Have we been given an idea about how many more years is PA going to accept all this trash? Do we know?
The only one I know, Commissioner, is the facility that, or the facilities that the current contract would serve. And they have somewhere between 5 and 10, and they're working on an expansion. That facility's outside of York, Pennsylvania. But it's a lot of my career was in Pennsylvania. The state itself is one of the largest importers of material, of waste. But like a lot of other states, they are having the same conversations that Annapolis is having to varying degrees. They don't want to be the dumping ground for the rest of the East Coast. Neither does Virginia, which is another large importer.
Right.
Outside of that, you're looking at Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, Illinois. Those are all by rail. No one is going to haul long haul waste out there. That's a rail operation. So every time you go another 500 miles or 300 miles, the transportation mode changes. Like Virginia has barge receiving facilities on the James River. So waste is still barged down there. It didn't end years ago when a barge went across the Atlantic looking for a home. So those are the methods. And each of those is more and more expensive than the one before.
Right.
One of the things I just want to mention, and then I'll get off I'll let it go to somebody else. People keep mentioning about landfill airspace and how much life we have. At 10,000 tons a year, which is what our current budget is for fiscal 22, the proposed budget. Cell 3, somewhere around 27. Now, on one hand, oh, good, that's a lot of life. We have a lot of time. That's only at 10,000 tons. So, if you put all of our waste into cell 3, it's less than 3 years. So just keep that perspective in mind. I can give you numbers for the whole site. They really are meaningless at this point in time, but it is over 100 years through the whole facility at 10,000. But as soon as you go to 95 or 100,000, it's 13, 14, 15 years. So that decision, wall is right there in front of us.
And that'll be here.
So those, again, just for discussion purposes.
Right.
Mr. Engel, do we have any civil engineering done on the expansion of the landfill and opening up other cells? What engineering designing investment have we made to this point to forecast out into the future what potential capacity and resources we have at our existing facility out there on 140? What's our future looking like? If you had the money to invest, what could we potentially do?
That's a loaded question. If you're talking about just what's permitted today, correct? You're not talking about another property.
Correct. What we have in possession on our property. What are we faced with the max?
Maximum lifetime at 10,000 tons, maximum lifetime is 134 years. None of us are worrying about it. But at all of the waste, again, it's 14 years. Cell 4 and cell 5, which goes over top of everything we already have. The permit's there. The outline of the cell is there. The only thing we do is we have to do an engineering design, submit it to the state, they approve it, then we bid it out and construct it. That's a little oversimplified, but that's basically what it is. So for life at our facility, what's already permitted, we're, 75% of the way to be able to put a shovel in the ground. We don't have to go back for reapproval of anything at the state level. Once you go off of our property, hypothetically, there are some tabletop studies that have been done on neighboring properties that are really nowhere near what the state would require to get something permitted. So now you're talking about a completely greenfield site. I'm not even gonna, I can't even estimate what kind of, lifespan would be on any adjacent property to the facility. I don't know that there's enough information out there to be able to look at it.
I appreciate that, but I'd really love to see if we have any engineering layout of future of what we could do for existing property, where a cell would go, how we could lay out efficiency on dropping off waste and recycling. Like I said, I'd be more than happy to make a substantial investment if we pulled off into waste management. I'd like to get the flow moving properly in and out, or a utility entrance separate from the citizen entrance. I'm sure there's things that we could do to try to become more efficient and increase our capacity, but right now I don't know. I'd love to see an overview and get a feel for what we're potentially faced with long term.
And what you're talking about is a more in-depth site master plan, and that really hasn't been looked at that I can find in looking over 30 years worth of documents and everything else. We do have the leachate line plan that discharged to somewhere else. That plan's been on paper since the 80s. And if I'm not mistaken, Eric can correct me if I'm wrong, he revisited that here maybe 4 years ago or so, in that range. And the county made the decision, no, we're not going to pursue it. So there is a cost, probably an engineering cost estimate to put that in. We could dust it off and update it, but whether or not we can physically do it, and we can certainly take the time to do that, but whether we can physically do it or not, or allowed to do it, that's a different story.
I appreciate that. I just want a long-term look at all of our options. I just can't stand fixing it for 1 year, because I believe the system benefit tax will fix it for 1 year, and then inflation will kick in and it'll be in the hole again. I'd love to develop an overall far-reaching strategy of not only where we're at this year, but where we could be in 20 years. Waste management isn't all go away, and we're going to keep facing this problem. I'd love to develop some sort of long-term strategy. And part of it, I think, it reduces the amount we're transporting, because transportation is a lot of cost. And if we in some way keep that trash in our landfill and maintain the leachate with the piping system, we could reduce our costs. I'd love to be able to analyze all the numbers long-term. I'm the kind of person that would be willing to spend more money now if I can calculate out over the long term what my savings are. I'm the kind of person who paid my mortgage off early, because I know the amount of interest I saved is exponential. And I do the same thing with equipment with my business when I buy it. I want to apply those same philosophies to how we run the county. I want to make the investment in waste management. I want to invest in you guys. If you can show us long term the benefit and the savings of it.
I wish I could take you in a Wayback Machine back to when the transfer station decision was made, and we could have a lot of fun trying to change that.
Commissioners, can I say something? I want to just let you know that we are certainly not pushing any sort of agenda on you. We're not trying to. We're trying to give you what we feel are the best options. We have looked at the leachate. We've looked at creating our own manufacturer recovery or materials recovery facility. We've looked at what happens when you change the tip fees and what we think the waste is going to go away. For every ton you put, and I'm not pushing this either, but I'm just saying, for every ton you put in the ground at the landfill, you make $65. So the landfill business is exactly that. It is a landfill, and the best way to make money at a landfill is to put it in the ground. Now, there are plenty of caveats to that. There are things that, the closure, you have to save for that, but you will make money landfilling throughout this process to put away for that, and you won't be adding from the general fund to make that operation happen. Now, like Cliff said, you're talking 14 years, you've got to site a new landfill. So that's the opposite challenge of that. But it is an option. We're not pushing the SBC, and we're saying there are options. We need some guidance on where you think we should focus our efforts.
Mr. Burdine, I appreciate the fact that you guys are all doing that information, but here's the failure. The failure is it's not being brought in front of us, in front of the public. We don't have all the information, all these reports and analyzations and study. We need to have that in session and a work session in front of the people, talking all that out. getting the knowledge and sharing the knowledge that you have, not only with us, but sharing it with the public so that all that can come together, of course, to make the decision. I just feel like that when you guys do audit research and don't bring it in front of us and you decide, well, it looks like it won't work. Oh, maybe it won't, but it's not your place to determine it's not going to work. It's our place to determine it's not going to work. And it's your obligation or responsibility as our subordinates to bring that information in front of us before the public so that when we ultimately make these tough decisions, we have the basis and justification for it and gain an understanding of our constituents as to why we made those decisions.
I think you've been giving guidance on looking at a few different options, also providing more information, as Commissioner Wan said, put it in front, and Commissioner Boucher getting in front of us to either accept or reject or, figure out, hey, let's get a little bit more information on whatever is being thrown in front of us. Dealing with the general fund, if it is what we want to continue to use to subsidize, what is the, if we are moving towards eliminating the general fund and subsidizing the enterprise fund, what would it take and what is the risk associated with it? The service benefit charge, along with the municipalities and the activities, the service benefit charge, again, the impact that would have. And then also the municipalities, what is the projects that they're doing, or not projects, the funds that they are using currently, how would they be then affected by the decisions we make and what I just shared? I think overall that captured everything. I mean, again, it's a two problem set. One is the landfill, physical problem set, and the other is the funds,
But they both come together.
and
That's the
they
problem.
absolutely do both come together.
I mean, if we can make money burying trash, as you say,
Yeah.
what about looking at surrounding property?
Mhm.
Creating another 4, 5, 6, 7 cells? Would it be better to invest in property now for the future use for those cells? And the money that we're going to make instead of what we're spending to get it out of here, maybe that's the way to go. I don't know. I know there's a lot of property surrounding the
There is
northern
some property out
landfill.
there. Yeah.
And whether or not it's for sale or not, I don't know. I'm not getting into that today. And maybe that's not the area. And I don't know, even if that's not the area, I don't know where the area would be, because quite frankly, with the ag preservation and everything else and the designated growth areas that we have in the county, I'm not so sure there is any other property in the county to have, landfill space, really.
Right.
And that's what the problem is being identified as in Montgomery.
Mhm.
And
And there-
those counties are running out of land.
And there's also value in capped landfills, whether they're golf courses or stadiums. Giant Stadium is built on landfill. Jimmy
So-
Hoffa's underneath it somewhere,
Yeah,
at least
so-
parts of them. So,
Right.
yeah.
So maybe that's another alternative, looking at
Yep.
surrounding property to see if maybe the investment now in buying it would be the best way in the future. And then we just start burying.
As long as they don't bury commissioners in the landfill.
Not that you're aware of. Okay. Any final thoughts? We went through a lot, and yeah, some of it was circular, but I think we laid out a lot of information over the last hour, 20 minutes, give or take.
Thank
Okay.
you, gentlemen.
Seeing here and none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Okay, all in favor? We have a majority.
I